a while. Today we are going to be covering the third verse of the Tao Te Ching and the third chapter of Wayne Dyer's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And as we start to get into the book a little bit deeper, this is where I think things start to really click, at least for me. And so I would be interested to hear what your thoughts were. And so the first thing we'll do is we will start with we'll overview the verse. So let me see here. So the third verse of the Tao Te Ching, the Tao Te Ching, is putting a value on status will create contentiousness. If you overvalue possessions, people will begin to steal. By not displaying what is desirable, you will cause the people's hearts to remain undisturbed. The sage governs by emptying minds and hearts, by weakening ambitions and strengthening bones. Practice not doing. When action is pure and selfless, everything settles into its own perfect place. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to reread that, and I'd like to share a few of my thoughts on this. And keep in mind, again, I am no expert in the Tao. I am no expert in Chinese culture or history. I am no expert in religion, theology, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm just someone who is trying to take this in, understand it for myself personally, but share it with others and allow others to potentially influence my own thoughts or change my own thoughts based on the learnings in this book. And so keep in mind, anything I share is my own personal thoughts, but is not potentially accurate. So that being said, now that I shared the caveat of my own interpretation, let me just share a few thoughts on what this says to me. Putting the value on status will create contentiousness. When I was thinking about this, as I was reading this, well, first off, I wanted to look up contentiousness to get a better understanding of what it exactly meant so that I could understand this verse a little bit better. And contentiousness, for those of you that don't know, is about fighting or squabbling over thoughts and ideas and things like that. And so so it's about like politics is a good dialogue that stirs up contentiousness. People get angry and frustrated and need to voice their opinion. And so it's anger and frustration and fighting is kind of what contentiousness means. And so putting value on status will create contentiousness, will create fighting, and putting value on status. So to me, that's like trying to grow ourselves and put ourselves in a leadership role will always create arguments or fights or frustration from others. And so maybe it's the value piece that is part of the issue, and maybe it's a status piece that is part of the issue. But it's an interesting thought and something we should think about. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. And how often do we put a value on this level of thing, whatever it is, versus this level. It could be cars, it could be homes, it could be anything, watches, shoes, you name it. If we overvalue a specific possession, people then want to steal it. Cars, shoes, the whole 9 yards. By not displaying what is desirable, you will cause the people's hearts to remain undisturbed. And so to me, that what that says is, if we do not make our cars and our homes and our shoes and our watches or whatever valuable, if we do not desire to have those things, or once we have them, create a certain level of value, then people around us, their heart will remain undisturbed. And so they will not feel that this is better than that, or what you have is better, or keeping up with the Joneses. And so maybe how I need to keep up with the Joneses is to steal your products or items that you have. Excuse me. The sage governs by emptying minds and hearts, by weakening ambitions and strengthening bones. The sage governs by emptying minds and hearts. So the sage is a wise person, and they govern by emptying minds and hearts. So I'm not sure what that means specifically, or what the interpretation there should be. I mean, to me, we are always trying to fill our minds and fill our hearts. And so maybe that's the juxtaposition of this verse, is doing the opposite of what we typically do. Okay, so they govern by emptying minds and hearts and weakening ambitions and strengthening bones. So to me, weakening ambitions means by not adding value to status, like we talk about in that first line. It is easier to govern people when they are not fanatical about their status or trying to be the best. We're all equal then if we don't have those ambitions. So weakening those ambitions, that could be what that means. Strengthening bones. So strengthening bones, initially my first thought there goes to exercise, of course. But it could also be strengthening the bones or foundation of our spiritual beliefs, of our soul, of our being, which probably more aligns with the Tao than, drinking milk to physically strengthen our bones in our body. Practice not doing. When action is pure and selfless, everything settles into its own perfect place. And so when you initially read that, practice not doing could mean that, a lot of people will read that and potentially say, you know what, does that mean being lazy? And if so, is that what we are promoting? Of course, we're not promoting laziness. But then the next line, when action is pure and selfless, everything settles into its own perfect place. And I think this ties into the this verse really well. And what I mean by that is, when you are doing things that are selfless and pure, then everything else in the world kind of falls into place. And so let me go back here to and so this is where, for me, it seems like the Tao or the book itself really starts to kick in. And so what I thought I would do is I would share some other thoughts related to some text that I highlighted in this chapter. Pursuit of status, be it monetary or a position of power, blinds us to our relationship with the eternal Tao. Along with the contented life that is available. Overvaluing possessions and accomplishments stems from our ego's fixation on getting more, wealth, belonging, status, power, and the like. So let me share a story with you. About 9 years ago, my wife and I were in debt up to our eyeballs. And I run a business and to some degree believe you got to spend money to make money. And I spent a hell of a lot of money. Sometimes maybe on the wrong things. However, at this point in our life, I was introduced to Dave Ramsey, and we went through Financial Peace University, and we were actually 100% focused on, we cut up our credit cards and started working on eliminating our debt. What I can say is in that time frame, I have been more content than I was ever in my life. And so we moved away from being consumers to working on paying off our debt, trying to create an emergency fund and trying to build a retirement fund and that sort of thing. And because we weren't always out there buying, because we didn't do everything that the Joneses did, we didn't worry about keeping up with the Joneses, I was able to spend more time with my wife and just enjoy being with my wife. And it was really a sense of contentedness that I never experienced in my whole life. Now, that kind of plays into this, I feel. When we have a pursuit of status or, monetary or power, it blinds us to our relationships to the eternal Tao. I can say for me personally, it blinded me from the relationship with my wife and the contentedness for my own personal life and well-being. And overvaluing possessions and accomplishments stems from our egos. One thing I can say is that over the last year or so, I have been learning more about my own personal ego and how ego affects others, both from a sales perspective, like in my business, or just business in general perspective, or just in person, relationships that I have with other people. For some reason, the ego is something that has come to my attention and something I've started to study or evaluate, because for me personally, my ego is probably something that was holding me back. And it feels like this is starting to flow into that direction. And so I think that there are a couple different things that, you look at this, the Tao Te Ching, and you look at change your thoughts and change your mind, and it can be very much from a personal perspective, but honestly, it can be very much from a business perspective as well. And I think it plays into both. And I think that someone in business or someone on a personal journey could learn a lot by trying to understand or dig into value, and dig into their ego a little bit and see when their ego starts to come out to play and when other people's ego comes out to play. Because if you can notice that, and notice that the reason that the people are doing what they're doing, including yourself, is because of something ego related, then you can connect to it in a different level. Or change your reactions or your responses to things sometimes. Another area that I highlighted was we must replace personal desire with the with the Tao-centered question, how may I serve? By simply changing these kinds of thoughts, we will begin to see major changes taking place in our lives. Now that's kind of an interesting thought, and again, really strikes true with me personally, because over the last, I don't even know how long, it seems like a long time, 5 years maybe, I don't know, several years. I pray, and like I said in previous videos, I come from a religious background, and so I pray. And one of the things over the last 10 years, I would say, I've learned to change my prayers from prayers about me being successful and getting things to prayers about other people and how can I help or be a better person. And, I don't know that I ever got an answer per se, or that anything fell into my lap until over the last 6 months or so. Do I feel like maybe this is an area that I can help others or serve others? And that's partially bringing kindness and respect to the world either through Facebook or in person, and try and align the enemies of both sides of the political world. The Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and like all these politicians going at it, slinging mud and things like that, has opened up a chasm of hate and, disgust and finger pointing and blaming and name calling and all this stuff. And my goal has been to try and bring respectful dialogue and kindness to these conversations, and try and share kindness, peace, love, respect, all that, instead of pointing fingers, blaming, calling names, all that stuff. And so that's why I created the Facebook group, Be the Change, all caps. So if you're not a member, certainly join. If this is something that you're interested in, bringing more kindness to the world, helping others. But it took me a long time and a lot of prayers to come up to a solution. But I think, it ties in very well with this verse, because it's about letting go of our own personal ego and trying to find ways that we can better help the world instead of focusing just on ourselves. Another verse that I highlighted here is ego and its incessant inventory of desires probably needs to be weakened so that the beauty of the Tao can be sensed. Demonstrate this to others by being a leader who removes egocentric temptations that foster envy, anger, and competition. And so I think that really drives home what I was talking about, is if we can get over the ego thing, we can focus on how can we help others and build people up instead of tearing them down. And in doing so, that's where we will be able to sense the beauty of the Tao, or the gratitude of the world and the love of the world, instead of dealing with all this negativity and hatred and anger. And here's a tip also highlighted. Remind yourself daily that there is no way to happiness. Rather, happiness is the way. And so that ties in with the consumerism. You know, it's like we buy all this stuff to make us happy. And at the end of the day, we just want to buy more stuff, right? It's just this addiction of stuff. And we're happy for a short period of time. And then we're frustrated and sad and, you know, want more stuff. So if we don't buy stuff, we find a sense of contentedness that we never had before. And that's what I experienced when I went through the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University program, a contentedness that I've never experienced before. And so I feel like that ties in a little bit with this, but also lead by example. And if you can get over your own ego, then you are not interfering with others because of your ego. And hopefully that connects with people and helps them want to figure out what the heck you're doing and why you're doing it, because they want to be a part of that. That's what I'm hoping both the Be the Change group will do, and also reading this book and working with you to discuss the thoughts and theories behind it. By staying in harmony on the path of the Tao, all the contentment you could ever dream of will begin to flow into your life. The right people. This means to finance where you're headed, and the necessary factors will come together. Stop pushing yourself, Lao Tzu would say, and feel gratitude and awe for what is. Your life is controlled by something far bigger and more significant than the petty details of your lofty aspirations. So again, allowing yourself to get over your own ego, allowing yourself to not worry about stuff, allowing yourself to be content with what you do and what we're doing in life. And by doing so, it kind of brings on the law of attraction to some degree. So you put good out there and good comes back to you tenfold. And so that's a theory that people talk about a lot, but I don't know how many people do that. And I can't speak to that because I haven't been perfect at doing that, but I am trying to grow myself personally. Part of why I'm doing this book study and this conversation about the Tao and trying to live by some of these theories is not necessarily to reap the rewards of doing good, but by doing good, good will come back to me in turn. And I just want to have a more positive place, a more kind world, a world filled with respect. And so the reason I got started on this is because when Bernie Sanders lost, he said, if you're not happy with the world, then get involved local and make change. And so for me, I took that a step further and kind of tied in Gandhi's philosophy of be the change you want to see in the world. And so I knew that theory for a long time too, but I never knew how to apply it. And what I'm trying to do is apply that to the world. So I'm trying to be the change. I am changing so that I can be the change that I want to see in the world. I'm trying to be more positive. I'm trying to show more respect. I'm trying to show more love, being a caring and kind person. And in turn, I'm hoping to get more kindness, more love, more support, and respect out of the world. Trust the perfection of the eternal Tao, for it is the ultimate source of the 10,000 things. And so that verse, that line kind of ties in or reinforces that. And I don't know if it's true Lao Tzu's philosophy on this, the author of Tao Te Ching, is that the law of attraction, so you be good and more good comes to you. But it kind of sounds like this a little bit. Trust the perfection of the eternal Tao. So practice it. To me, that is what that says. And for that, you will be connected to the source of 10,000 things. And I think we talked about this in an earlier verse where 10,000 things is all things. It's cars, it's watches, it's everything that is named. And so a lot of times that's property, it's homes, cars, the whole 9 yards. That's things that we own a lot of times, or property, I think. And so to some degree, now I don't know that this is really right. Are they saying, put it out there, be good, help others, and you will be rewarded with more wealth than you could ever imagine? And so, and I don't know if it's wealth in the terms of monetary wealth per se, or status or position, but maybe more wealth than we can understand. That's an internal wealth. Something to think about. Do the Tao now. So usually at the end of the chapter, they have a few things that they discuss at the end. So I'm going to read over this last chapter and give you some other thoughts. Do the Tao now. Watch for an opportunity today to notice that you're planning on buying something. Choose to do the Tao and listen for guidance. Be grateful that you have the choice to make the purchase. Then practice listening to yourself and not doing. Through your feelings, the Tao will reveal the way for you in the moment. Trust it. You might be guided to buy the item and savor it with gratitude. Donate it. Procure or buy one for you and one for someone else. Give the money to a charity instead of getting the item, or refrain from obtaining it altogether. Practice doing the Tao in everyday situations, and you'll know contentment in a deeper sense. As this verse says, when action is pure and selfless, everything settles into its own perfect place. Now, that is my definition of contentment. Okay, so that being said, I'm curious what your thoughts are. Please feel free to share your thoughts either in comments as you see this, maybe on YouTube, or in the chat room. But I would be curious to hear what your thoughts are. Today, this verse and this chapter to me spoke volumes, and I think is a really good chapter to be studying, verse to be studying. And I think there's a lot to learn, get away from our ego, be less concerned with status and power, give up our concern on the value of things, and, potentially not be a consumer and always buying things, and find a contentment that is well beyond what any item that you buy can bring. And so to me, that's pretty powerful and it's pretty deep stuff. But anyhow, I thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to talking to you next week as we talk about verse 4 and the 4th chapter of verse 4 of the Tao Te Ching, and the 4th chapter of change your thoughts, change your life. And anyhow, thank you so much, and we will talk to you next week. Have a great day.